I love it when a game takes a somewhat familiar mechanism and adds just a little twist that makes the game completely unique. And this game has that. And that rule is, what do you get when you cross Ave Roma and Arc Nova? You get Nova Roma. It's nothing like those two games, but it's really, really good. In Nova Roma, players will be securing trade routes and building buildings and racing chariots and doing all kinds of great Roman things in the attempt to end the game with the most victory points and become the victor. Now, the meat and potatoes of this game is in the center of this board, also known as the Forum. And around the Forum, there are 8 different actions. And players will be placing their meeples, and they will get to do the 2 actions that correspond with the location that they chose. So if I were to place my meeple here, I would get to do the action in the row and the column of where I placed my meeple. So each turn, you're going to get to do 2 actions. Review copy provided by the wonderful people at 25th Century Games. And if you like or tolerate my content, please consider clicking that subscribe button. Right, Harley Dog? Yes, right. And you can do them in any order you choose. However, you do have to complete 1 action before moving on to the next. But before players start doing that, whoever is the start player or the player with this beautifully chunky first player token will get to place the Emperor out on the Forum. And you have to choose one of the 2 places that are depicted on the Emperor tile. And then that tile is discarded, and it also acts as a timer for the game. The game takes place over 5 rounds. When you place your meeple out on the Forum, there's different strength levels. So depending on how many meeples you have in that row or column will dictate how strong that action is. And that little strength rule is what makes this game special. And that is what keeps you coming back for more in this one, because it's pretty exciting when you can build up an action to get it really strong. And it's great to see your opponent's face melt when you put your meeple in just the right spot to kind of ruin their plans, because they really needed to get that level 3 sailing action, but not so much anymore because you got in the way. But back to the Emperor. The Emperor acts as like a wild meeple, so anyone can gain and increase their action power by 1 if the Emperor is in the row or column that they place their meeple. So if I were to place my meeple here, this row action, this building action, would actually be a level 2 because he's there. And then if the yellow player was to put their meeple there, then they would also get a level 2 building action as well. Now say later on, if I were to put my meeple here, I would get a building action of 3 because I have 1, 2, plus the Emperor would make a 3rd power level. Now you can never go higher than a level 3 power on an action. That's just where it maxes out. And this game is what they would call a point salad game. And if you've been in the board game space for some time, you know what a point salad is. For those of you who don't, point salad means that you do stuff and you get points. You fart and you get points. And that's why they call it a point salad, because you just points. Now, what do all these 8 different actions do? Let's go over them. Let's take a look at the sailing action. If the Forum happens to look like this, I have 2 meeples there, so I have a 2 strength on the sailing action. So that means I can choose from this card, or this card, and I can turn in the resources on the card to take a sail action. So let's say I spent this wheat here, so then I could complete this order, so then that goes face down next to my player board, and then I can move my boat 1 space. So I could either go this way or I could go this way. And players can go either way with their boats, and they can even have both of their boats go the same direction. If I were to have gone here, I would have gained a coin. If I had gone here, I would have gained a prestige. And players can also gain some pretty large points at the end of the game for completing a sail route. During the build action, a player, depending on their strength, can choose one of these cards here. Let's say that I completed this card here by turning in a wood and any resource of my choice. This is also going to be worth 2 points at the end of the game. Now, if you look, that is like a 1x2 shape. So what I do is I take cubes and I make a 1x2 shape out on the map. So maybe I put those here. Each one of these 3 regions will score for majority. So whoever has the most in A gets 5 points. Whoever has the most in B gets 6 points, 2nd place gets 4, 3rd place gets 2. Same thing with 7. And these little areas here, whenever one of those is completely circled by cubes, then all players touching that gain the benefit there. And players can only build in a location depending on the strength of their action. So a strength of 1, they can only build in location A. A strength of 2, they can build in A or B. A strength of 3, they can build in A, B, or C. So it is a little tougher to build in C, but it's also worth a little bit more points at the end of the game. Next action that you could take is the produce action. This is where players can place their artisan on their player board. So if I were to place my artisan here, I would get a wood and a wine. Or if I were to put it here, I would get a stone and a horse. And these spots can actually be upgraded, but more on that later. And when performing the produce action, they can also hire more artisans by discarding a food to gain a new one. And you can do this as many times as the strength of your action. And at the trade action, you can gain coins equal to the total power of this action. You can also discard follower cards to gain more coins, and you can also spend coins to gain resources. Here at the upgrade action, you gain a number of influence equal to your total power. You can also turn in wine for more influence, and you can get some of these estate tiles. And these are pretty dope because you take these and you add them to your player board. So now, if I were to place an artisan there, I would get a food along with the stone and the horse. So you can kind of do some engine building there and build up your estate to be nice and lucrative. And the recruit action allows you to draw cards equal to the strength of your action, and they can be any of these cards here, or you can draw blind from the top of the deck. Also, you can hire one of the recruits. It doesn't have to be the one that you just drew, it could be one that you previously had, and depending on the strength of your action, it costs different amounts. So if your strength is only 1, then it costs 2 coins. If your strength is 2, then it costs 1 coin. And if your strength was 3, well, it's free. And these recruitment cards are totally sweet because some of them give you ongoing abilities. Like this jeweler here, every time you take the produce action, you gain an extra coin. Or this oracle, when you take the petition action, you gain an extra prestige. But that's only good once per round, as denoted by this little 1x there. But it does reset every round. And this is an in-game scoring points, so you get 1 victory point plus 1 victory point for each of those animal tiles that you have on your estate. And then the gambler here, every time you race, you gain an extra coin. Totally awesome. They come in handy, and you can build a pretty sick engine with these cards. And the race action, that allows players to advance on this racetrack here, and should you ever cross one of these lines, you do have to discard a horse from your supply, but these are important because at the end of each round, whoever is the furthest along on different colored tracks gains these markers, which are points. So the one on the bottom is the current race. So whoever's ahead on the white track would gain this tile and gain 3 points. But you can see that next round, whoever is ahead in the blue track will then gain the 3 points. And there are little milestones on here. Whenever you cross these, you can either gain prestige or an achievement token. What are achievement tokens? Glad you asked! The achievement tokens are placed on players' mosaic boards. So say I've advanced 3 spaces or more on the racing action, I can claim this achievement. And anytime you claim an achievement in the top row, you do gain a resource of your choice. And these will also be worth 2 points at the end of the game. Below that, this row, these will be worth 3 points at the end of the game. And this row will be worth 5 points at the end of the game. And this is important because you can only place one of these per turn, and you are limited to 7 of them. So you're not going to be able to finish this whole board. So do you want to take these early ones that are only worth 2 points at the end of the game, but you do get resources to help you out early game? Or do you want to wait and try to get the bigger point ones at the bottom, but these ones are also harder to achieve? You might not be able to achieve them. So do you take the low-hanging fruit, or do you try to get, some of the big points? And also, whenever you fill in a row or a column, you do get these extra little perks here. Like this would give me a prestige right away, a coin, and 2 victory points. Same thing with the rows, the columns, and the diagonals as well. And then last but certainly not least is the petition action. And this allows you to spend 2 influence to take the start player token. This also lets you take any of the other 7 actions. However, you do have to spend influence equal to the strength of the petition action when you take it. So if you have 2 meeples on there when you're taking the petition action, you can spend at most 2 prestige to take a level 2 action. And once all players have placed all 3 of their workers in the forum, then that completes the forum phase, and then there's a pretty quick cleanup phase, and then rinse and repeat unless it's the end of the 5th round. Then you go to in-game scoring. And during in-game scoring, players will tally up their points in 11 different categories. Yes, that's right, 11 different categories. And the player with the most points is the victor. And that's Nova Roma in a nutshell. Nova Roma. absolutely adore this game. It is so good. It is really good. Like it a lot. So let's get the stuff that sucks out of the way. Theme. I feel like the theme is kind of hit or miss there. There's even a building card where you can build a statue, and what resource does it take? It takes wood. It's just kind of funny because the statue is clearly not wood. And I think it would have been kind of nice maybe for your first game if they would have had a set of actions already printed on the forum board. So that way, you don't have to worry about shuffling up those tiles and laying them out. Maybe there's something that's kind of a friendly setup. But I do enjoy how those tiles are shuffled and placed out there, because it does make the game feel pretty different every time you play it, because depending on how they're laid out, you get those different intersections. Maybe you get a nice intersection of across between producing and building, so you're able to produce some of the materials needed to build those buildings. But other times that is not an option, so you do have to change your strategies from game to game. And I would like to have seen on the player boards a little more room for controlling the inventory on your resources. I feel like it is just a touch tight, but those are all just really nitpicky things. Because I feel like I have to say something negative about this game instead of just gushing over it, because it is really good. The production value of it is just amazing. The meeples, they're screen printed on both sides. They look great. That first player token is absolutely ridiculous. The art is great. The quality of the cards is very good. They shuffle well. So everything from a production aspect is phenomenal. In the gameplay and just the overall joy that I have had playing this game. It is a remarkable game. There is a lot going on in the game, but despite all the different wheels and gears turning, I feel like it's not that bad of a teach. You can probably teach it to someone who's familiar with gaming in about 15 minutes. It's a very reasonable teach. Yes, they may have some turns that are a little slower. I have seen some players get a little bit of analysis paralysis, not an overwhelming amount, but even at 4 players, I feel like the turns weren't overly long. There wasn't too much downtime. There is some downtime. Be aware of that, but nothing unacceptable. The game can seem a little overwhelming your first play, because there's just so many different things that you can do. Where do you start? But just kind of pick something, because I have seen many different strategies work in this game. I've won this game by not building anything at all. I've also won the game by just solely building a ton of stuff, by racking up a ton of points, not only by the in-game scoring majorities on each one of those 3 sections, but also from having all of the victory points that were on the cards that you built. I've also seen players just totally clean up by doing the shipping and just getting all the high points from the shipping. One of my favorite strategies is just rocking the chariot racing. It's, just blaze up there and claim every one of those tokens. And also, if there's a tie on the chariot racing, it goes to the player's token who's on the bottom, or the player who got there first. So you can just blaze your way all the way to the very end, which you also get bonus points, 5 bonus points for each one of the different colored tracks that you get at the end. And if you can get to the end and be the first one there, you're automatically going to win all of the chariot races. And on top of that, the chariot racing is pretty cool too, because you only draw 5 of those tiles during the setup of the game, but there are extras that don't get used, and you don't know what those colors are that aren't going to show up. So you could be moving up on a chariot track and it doesn't even happen. Like, that color doesn't even come up in the game. And I've seen that happen too, and that's kind of funny too. And the game comes with enough player aids for each player to get one, and those are nice too, because they clearly go over the different phases of the game, and on the flip side, it also goes over all the different scoring opportunities, which is helpful too to remind players of, what they're going to be scoring at the end of the game. And on the back of the rulebook too, there is a nice breakdown of all 8 different rules. But overall, this is just a fabulous game. I'm giving this one 4.5 beard strokes out of 5. It's darn near perfect. It is so good. An absolute must-have. Staying in my collection 100%. And that is Nova Roma. Definitely check this one out.